as well. Yeah, it didn't. No, because you're saying I need to authorize, so I didn't authorize single sign-in, so I think I must use my create as account. All right, that's fine. Or not. I should already have that. Let's try something else quick. Go back and log in because I know I have the account already. Actually, no, I should go through that because you guys are gonna go through the same thing. Never mind. I should actually do that. If that's what you guys are getting, then I should go through the same thing. So what do we want to use? Do we want to sign in with our GitHub, or do you guys register with GitHub or with your career devs accounts?
I use my career devs account.
I use career devs.
Same.
All right, I'll go through that process then. Try to
I
do
think
these
I
single
just use
sign-on.
my regular email.
In hindsight, that probably would have been the better option for me, but
Probably.
who knows what I was thinking when I did this.
And for
Here's
the
the
company
question.
name, you can of course give it a, since you're not actually doing it for your company, you can do a fake company if you need to, so. In case I do
Was
decide.
it bad I
creative
typed
user-
in career devs for the company name?
I did the same.
Yep, too late now.
I said I was a vice president.
How long do we have our career devs account, career devs email?
So far we haven't planned to ever get rid of it. But if we ever get to a point where, yeah, we hit a limit on our email accounts, we might be looking back to see who's using them and not. And if you're not actively using it, we'll probably get rid of it. So
'Cause I don't
I will say,
really
once you
use
have a
it.
job,
Yeah.
you might want to start switching stuff over. And most of the services that you use Creatives for, was the geek level services, you should be able to add a second email to it. So like my GitHub has both my Creatives account, Interested account, and Gmail account, personal email account as well. So I can sign with either of those. LinkedIn, same thing. I have all my email accounts on my LinkedIn. So most of the services you're going to be using with Creatives, you should be able to add a secondary email account.
The developer sandbox, right?
Yep.
Mhm.
Pretty sure I did this trial already.
I think I did too, but it seems like they didn't have all my information, I think, is what it was.
I set up an account a while ago, and then when I actually clicked the try it button, I had to repopulate some of my information,
Oh,
like
that's my
address
account.
and things like that. So that was my
Yeah.
experience.
I am having to do that right now, actually. It's missing my address.
Apparently my account here is Cliff4. Cool.
Company name, the career devs, yes.
Again, put something kind of fakey, that way they don't think like Creatives is trying to sign up for a bunch of trials. So if you want to put Career Devs Sergio or Sergio Career Devs, or just make your own version of it, or just Sergio company. Probably should
Yeah,
have
I
said
miss-
there. But yeah,
I
when I
miss
first
when you
created
said
my
that.
account, they didn't ask me that. That's why I didn't think you guys were going to be asked it. So I noticed that it knew I was a CTO. So it means I had filled out something before, I feel like, because it knew that about me. So I feel like I did fill out something before. All right. Welcome to the Developer Sandbox for Red Hat OpenShift. Go ahead and click Get Started. So to start the OpenShift experience, we'll be launching the Developer Sandbox for Red Hat OpenShift. So it'll be provisioning that. We'll deploy a sample application. And this will be kind of the thing we start doing today after we look through some of the key elements that I want to make sure you guys are aware of. So first off, let's launch the Developer Sandbox for Red Hat OpenShift. And this is where the whole phone number thing, I think, gets into play. Potentially. And I probably should have had you guys do this before. This is all you need. Big key thing here. This is actually not filled in. That was one of the biggest issues we ran into for people trying to do this during a hackathon. This is actually not pre-filled. Even though it shows +01, you actually have to enter +01.
Oh, that's irritating.
Yep. I'm also going to do this because I don't want it on the recording. So I don't care if you guys know my number, but I don't want to know the recording. So, well, it's too late, actually. Just realize it's right there. God dang it. Honestly, those going to the stupid YouTube edit stuff. Send code.
Will autofill.
Yep, thanks, Google autofill.
Someone's gonna have to change the number.
God dang it. Oh, this number already get. If I don't actually have your number saved, I don't answer. Period. If it's a person I know, you just text me saying, "Hey, where are you?" And I'll be like, "Who is this?" And then I'll answer it. You call me and I don't know that number, I do not answer. I'm like, it's a human, they'll text me. 'Cause who
Everyone
calls?
texts Claire now.
My phone does automatic call screening, and it will display on my
God damn it,
display
give me
what
two codes
it
now.
was saying.
Is it
People
taking a
generally-
while to submit for anybody else? Oh, too many verification attempts. What does that mean?
Yeah, it took a minute, but it came through.
Mine didn't go.
I went wrong, try again. Uh-oh, are we overloading the system?
I think so.
Oh.
Oh no. I'm gonna pause the recording for the moment.
What the heck?
Don't read.
I'm
Oh, wait, I'm in.
Well, I got mine just fine.
Oh, mine went in. It booted me out, but I got the confirmation email and now it works.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm in now. So you might just try again and get the, yeah, there you go. So you're trying to get to this point right here. So
Okay, almost there. I verified my email 3 times. Why does it still ask for this?
it's a good question.
I've done it 3 times today.
The verification.
I want to be sure. Stop acting like a robot.
Just do
You're
it.
setting up flags somehow, Matt.
How can we be so sure you're really human? And not a
I-
bot?
I click the verification email. It says you're already verified. And then I go back to Red Hat and it says you need to verify your account.
You have to go to your email.
I
you?
did.
He did.
Okay.
He said he's already done it. Close out the browser and open back a fresh one and go back in. Maybe there's something stuck in the cache or something.
Okay.
Not sure on that one.
Oh.
Oh yeah, well, so while you guys are working on that, so just a side note, so the whole thing that Gabe actually posted about and the thing with the attendance and the short link, that's again one of the benefits of microservices. Google's short link system died, but the links, the long links still work, the actual form still works, all the other stuff in Google still works. Just the URL shortening service died, and that's one of the big key benefits you see of microservicing and pulling things apart.
I didn't have to use that link. I used the other one up that was on top of Slack and it worked fine for me.
I think I just gave you guys, I don't think I did a shortening one either. So I don't think I gave you guys a shortened URL. I think I
Hey, did
gave you
anybody
the
try to
one
go on
with the-
Stack Overflow the other day? It was down
What was?
at Stack Overflow.
Stack Overflow was down,
Hey,
huh?
I'm in. Fantastic.
Wow, everything's
Who does-
going down these
Who does
days.
Stack Overflow go to when Stack Overflow breaks?
I don't know. It just wouldn't allow me to go in. Then like wouldn't allow
Everybody
me to go
takes a
in.
day
like,
off.
Really?
Yeah.
That sounds like a coder's worst nightmare. A day,
Yep.
a normal day on a job and Stack Overflow's down. I'm like, uh-oh.
We are
I was
Rob.
trying to find it.
Time to take time for a vacation day. That's all you can do there. If Stack Overflow's down, it's, yep, development's on hold for today.
I was.
That's when you just go home and go back to sleep.
Yep.
It was giving me like a thing. It says not found or unauthorized. I was like, what? And I was like, this is gonna be work. What the hell? Stack Overflow. And then like 15 minutes later, it's like Stack Overflow's under maintenance. I'm like, okay, we'll just have to wait a little bit longer now.
Geez, something broke. Somebody touched something they shouldn't.
That's why I went to is it down Stack Overflow and it was like,
I got 500. Wait a minute.
What?
I
How's
wonder how
this
many
done?
other. I wonder
know,
how
it's
many other
just-
things break when Stack Overflow breaks.
Oh, geez.
Just something went wrong, but now it took me to the developer.
Yeah, I got the same thing.
Failed successfully.
Yep. Successfully failed. Yep.
Task failed successfully.
Mhm. Love those. Software. I will say I'm not a Reddit person, but Software Gore is an interesting Reddit to look at as a developer. Seeing all
Software
the
Gore?
glitches, Software Gore. It shows all the glitches and weird behaviors and just odd things that a computer can do. And yeah, one of them was one of the things that they posted was task failed successfully. It actually was an error message from Google that it would show for the task event system and say task failed successfully. It's like, wait, what? That's good job.
We're gonna skip the tour, yeah.
I will say though, with everything Reddit, just be careful of anything in SFW. Reddit is not a safe place. No matter what Reddit you go to, it is never safe.
I think it automatically blurs them for you. And if you have
What's that?
setting. It automatically blurs anything in NSFW.
Only on the mobile app, I think. I don't think the website does it.
No, the website does, yeah. I
Does
used
it?
to
Oh,
use
good.
Reddit a lot, yeah, back in Florida for some reason like that. Yeah, I used to use a lot of Reddit.
I don't use it enough to actually know all of its features.
You know,
I tend to only visit it when someone else is like, you should look at this. I'm like, okay.
I use Reddit all the time. I go
I
to
don't.
Providence. That's how I learned career devs. Reddit was on Providence. Go to code night.
Really? I
Yeah,
didn't post it.
I know someone did. Someone posted. I'm like, oh,
Cool.
This is cool. I'll go right to it.
Nice. Anyone else still having trouble getting here? Need any help now? If you're having trouble getting to this point, please raise your hand.
I think I am. I thought I signed up for this the other day. Now I can't seem to. Doesn't seem to. I'm getting something different. I just have to stop back in the beginning again.
I don't know what's wrong with mine.
All right, I'm gonna stop sharing
Said
with you
that-
guys.
It
Start
says
sharing
on
yours.
export hold.
Start sharing your screen and see, and as a class, can you guys see if you can help him out? I gotta go help Leo for a quick second. We'll be right back. So you guys see if you can help him get to where we need to be. So we'll be right back. Oop, I should probably pause this. Once I figure out what the button is. Pause. So that back up. All right. So for now, though, let's take a look at what we got here. So this is your sandbox environment. This is the OpenShift dedicated and GUI or UI, the GUI, graphical user interface. Now again, pretty much everything you can do from here, there is a CLI alternative that you can take. To keep things simple, keep things quick and easy, we're going to go ahead and use the graphical user interface for this. Since most likely whatever company you're working for, you'll probably be using some sort of graphical user interface. Mostly just because it's safe and easy to use. Of course, being familiar with the CLI is not a bad thing, just not necessary and nothing we need to get into the weeds with. So I'm trying to keep things simple, and I want you to see a lot of the visual tools here because, like I said, one of the companies we're working with is Red Hat, and so most likely you might be helping to develop how this tool works. So not just the CLI, but potentially how this works too. So, topology here is where you get to view your clusters in your applications, get to set them into, you can wrap them up in environments so that they are considered local to each other and also separate. We'll be seeing that shortly once we start adding things to this. The main thing you want to see here is that you have your dev project, a stage project. You cannot do production with your system here. So this system will never go to production level. The real
How did you
difference
get-
here-
How
Go
did
ahead.
you get to the developer part? Because I was in it, but then I guess
It
I closed my
starts me
window by
there.
accident.
Started me there. I haven't gone anywhere yet. This is just the screen it loaded by default.
Hmm.
I haven't
Okay,
clicked
I'll
on
let you
anything.
finish. I'm logged in. I just trying to figure out how to get to where you're at. It's okay. I'll just watch.
I just tried using the hard code item here. I was just like, maybe not. I just noticed that there's this stuff in there that's not easy to use.
It's okay. Just continue, and
Okay.
then afterwards I'll figure out how to get to it.
Sounds good. All right, anyway, for most of us purposes, though, the only difference between these two is just the idea is that these two should be identical, just using different GitHub branches. So dev should be using its own branch, and staging should be using a second branch. Dev is development, staging is where you prep stuff to be launched to the public, and then you launch from staging. So that's kind of how it goes. Staging is stuff that has already been tested that is ready to go to production. And we go into a couple final tests, potentially. Really by this point, it's staged and ready to get pushed to production on the update on the update day. So whatever day you pick for updating. And that's kind of how the normal flow of computers of software goes. Development is where you develop and also where you test things. Staging is where you put stuff for being uploaded on upload day. And the concept of that upload day occurs on a certain day and it's scheduled. And so the idea is that staging only ever gets finished products, finished items, because once that update date hit, once the update day hits, it pushes dev to production and uploads it, regardless of what's there. So very rarely do you want to put stuff up on staging to test. Do people still test staging? Yes, of course. You can still test the hell out of staging and roll it back at any point if you do seem to find something that was not caught in dev. But the idea is, the mentality is that staging is not where you test, is not where you test. Staging where you put stuff ready for update on update day. So make sure you have that mentality correct. All right. We're only gonna have the one application. And once we can have multiple applications. That's the thing that's what I was mentioning here. We can have that multiple applications that have clusters in them that are running pods. But before we get into that, again, the main areas that are going to be very, very important for you guys here: topology. You might look at builds and project once or twice, and then secrets is really useful. The other thing you want to know is that right now we are in developer mode. So we are considered a developer right now. We also have administrator. Now, when you go to the company you're working for, this may not exist. The administrator gives you more access to the systems themselves. So networking settings, creating serverless systems where you adjust functions and just sort of the code itself. So you're not running an actual server. You're not actually loading up some sort of Linux server, running some sort of instance on it. You can look into serverless architecture. We're not going to get into that. Serverless architecture is similar to how we've talked about microservice architecture. Serverless architecture is another way of running applications. Instead of running some sort of Linux server, you just have your code hosted on another instance that will then run at endpoints. It's a very interesting concept. And again, can minimize for very simple systems, can be very useful. Like for single actions, single things you want to have happen, can be really, really useful. Right. So really, these are the main areas. Depending on, I will say there are some areas you might want to just be aware of. Storage is important and build is important to just be aware of. During the, the hackathon, some people ran into problems because they did kind of reset themselves a couple times to try a second time or a third time. So they would delete their entire application, all their pods and stuff, and try to get another. You only have, I think it's like 10 gigs of reservable space. Whenever you create a cluster or an instance, it reserves, I think, like a gig or something by default, and then can ask for more if it needs it, but it reserves a gig right off the bat and will ask for more when it starts to get full. And that means if you try to create 10 instances or multiple instances, you can run out of reserved data. When you delete something, it doesn't always delete everything. So you might have to come in here and clean those up if you decide to, if you build one of your applications, feel like it's not working right, so you delete that system and that cluster and all that and try again, your persistent volume claims might run out because you might claim too much data. And what that kind of like is like, again, just think of a plot of land. Let's say you have 10 acres of land. And every time you create an instance, someone will say, I claim that 1 acre for myself. If you get rid of them, it doesn't clear the land yet. For example, in this case, you actually have to go there and take the sign off saying this land is no longer claimed. So they're claiming that space, even though they're not using it yet. Your application is not using the whole gig, but it's saying this gig is mine. No one else can touch it. That makes sense? Again, this should only be a problem if you are if you're like retrying multiple times, uploading multiple applications with multiple clusters. Overall, shouldn't be
That
an issue.
one, yeah, that and the build, I have no,
That's
yeah, those
everything I
two.
mentioned, yeah.
Yeah,
As you create your applications, if you delete the application from the topology window, it doesn't necessarily build all the build configuration data. So you might have to come in here to delete those items. Same with builds and build configs. Just go in and clean up your system.
yes, because I was working on a project and it had all similar names and all similar things, and it just gets really just all confusing. So
Right.
you go in and clean it all out just so you get your sanity back.
A lot of these other areas, though, we're not really going to be looking too much into. So administration, we're not going to be getting into. User management, we're not going to be getting into because you're not really working with others. This is where you would go if you were working with someone else on the same project. I think you're limited to only like 2 people, I think, 2 other people. Workloads, again, this is kind of that based on how much workload is your system. So this would be where you want to go to help set up some scalability systems and stuff like that. It's also where you can set up cron jobs. So I know I mentioned that with some of you before. For some of your projects that you need to do, like you send out notifications or daily reminders or daily situations or cleanup scripts or something like that. This is where you could set it up that OpenShift could actually run those cron jobs as well. Since you're not actually creating a actual Linux server that you're going to be able to like log in and make changes that will be persistent. Where your Java application is going to get hosted is on a spun up Linux system that is temporary. In your systems, that one Linux system that gets built is going to be the one running. But in a more complex application, again, think about like Amazon, or let's go Best Buy, because Best Buy is not too global, I think. It might be it's probably global, but not massively. One thing you think though is like companies like that, or even maybe even Radio Shack or certain companies that are not international, they have peaks and dips in their activity every day, right? They have peak hours, right? Hell, NFL, I'm sure, has peak hours on game days, and then during the rest of the week, they're probably not as active as they normally are during the weekends, right? NFL.com, I can guarantee, is very, very active on the weekends when the games are playing. But on the weekdays, when the games aren't active, they definitely get traffic because there are definitely some football fans out there that are football every day of the week, 24/7. So they definitely get traffic during the week, but I can guarantee they get a lot less during the weekday than they do on the weekend. Would that be a safe assumption?
Definitely.
Good. Always good to make sure we're on the same page with assumptions. Because it helps to make sure you guys understand what I'm talking about. So the concept of scaling is that on those weekends, we have a lot more people visiting the site. We need to make sure that our site can handle that. Where is my tablet?
Just imagine the Super Bowl week coming up. It's how many people are gonna hit that.
Oh, geez.
Speaking of which,
What?
I mean, the Super Bowl is coming this weekend, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Is it? Oh,
usually when someone
geez.
says speaking of which, it's because they have something to say.
No, I mean, because we're talking about it coincidentally.
Yeah. That would be the word, coincidentally then.
Superb owl.
So yeah, let's say we have our NFL.com server right here. This is the server for NFL.com.
Jeez, Sergio.
What? We'll just add what
Superb
it is.
owl.
Owl. What?
He's
Superb owl.
yeah.
I don't know what's going on.
You're thinking too hard about it. That's okay.
The
Okay.
use.
All right. I'm good right now. I'm
I just
focused on
got
this. I'm focused on code. So we got server, NFL.com. We have our one server running our websites. Whenever somebody wants to visit the page and look up data, they go to this server. So they say, hey, I want data. Server's like, all right, here's your data, and sends it back. That's one person. On Super Bowl day, let's go with that. What do we think? How many arrows do you think I'm writing in a single second?
1 billion.
I want to say 1 billion. It's not really only America that cares about the Super Bowl, really. There are a
Yeah.
couple other countries do care, but not the whole world. And I don't think America has 1 billion people in it, right? We're like
No, it
close
only
to
has
one.
300 million.
That's it, right? Yeah. so-
Only.
Only, yeah. I could say it's safe that I would probably having to run like maybe a couple 100,000 arrows every second, right? Coming in and out. It would be safe to say a couple 100,000 a second is coming in asking for data on the status of the Super Bowl game. If I was to write 1,000 hours to this one server, what's going to happen to this poor server?
It's gonna crap out.
That
Gonna
poor thing's
crash.
gonna be like, kill me now, right?
Mhm.
Like if I would like just imagine yourself at a restaurant or a retail job, and all of a sudden you see a line of 1,000 people line up at your register. What is going through your head right now?
Lots of money and tips.
How fast can I quit?
Thank you, Matt, for the real answer.
Really? I thought
You're
it was,
probably
where
just
is my
like,
coat?
Where is
You're
my
probably just
coat?
like, oh, kill me now.
Kill me now, yeah. Yeah. Sorry to say, Jim, I don't care how good you think you are, 1,000 people, you're not going to get good tips because there's no way you can serve all 1,000 people effectively enough that they'll want to tip you.
Well, you didn't say it once. You just said 1,000 people showed up at the door. I'm taking them in one at a time.
Again, yeah, but it's you're by yourself trying to handle 1,000 people. You're not
First in,
gonna-
first out can only get you so far.
First in, first out. You know, FIFO. Or we want to do last in, last out?
Yeah, I still can say customer 100 is not going to be happy waiting, even though you were polite and you did the best you could. They're still not going to be happy having to wait that long.
Well, if the 1,000 persons out there doesn't understand that, then they'd be going by, they'll be waiting too long.
Then that's a great example, right? So yeah, think about that. There's 1,000 people lined up. You're trying to handle them. How many of those people are probably going to, if it's just you handling them, how many of those people are going to probably leave line?
That's a lot
Wow,
of
you
time
know
out
what?
of
What
hours.
about the, what
Probably
about
most of them
voting?
are just
I
gonna
mean,
leave.
Yeah, a lot of them are going to leave, and that can definitely happen here. The server can only handle so much. So yeah, either people are going to time out, they're going to give up and go to another location to get the data. They're going to try searching somewhere else for the data. So now in that job, if you were working that, how would you mitigate this?
Bring on
So
more people.
Yeah, hire more staff.
you would have someone else. Yeah, if you were like how CVS does it. If you're at CVS and a bunch of people start lining up, they'll say cashier to the front, right?
Mhm.
They'll bring someone else up to the cashier and they'll open up another server to serve those requests. And that's what balancing does and workloads handle. So we can
Load
spin up-
balancing.
Yep, load balancing. We can spin up another server, which great that term fits perfect for my analogy. They'll also serve up NFL.com. Will also serve the same website. So as requests are coming in, a balancer server that OpenShift is now running on your behalf that you don't need to worry about. This is one of the backend systems that's working on the OpenShift system, is going to take those requests and equally distribute them to the servers based on their current load. Now, how do you evaluate how hard a server is working?
You said,
How
how
hard-
do you?
Yeah. How would
Well,
you
I-
evaluate if your computer is working hard or not?
Check the task manager.
Yeah, and what
How
probably
fast it's going?
usually most commonly CPU workload. How hard is the CPU working? How much of the CPU is being utilized?
Mhm.
The more CPU that's being utilized, the more effort is putting in, the more processes it's requesting. But CPU combined with like RAM and all those things. So you can evaluate the service current workload and how hard it's working to say, hey, which one can I send it to? I'll send it to the one that has the lowest workload currently. And at any point, if one of these servers, let's say one, or on average, let's say the average server load hits, let's say 65%. If the average of the two servers together, or if both servers at any point are over 65% at the same time, I'm going to spin up yet another.
Oh, so you can actually set that in there?
Mhm.
Oh, that's
You can tell
interesting.
it what kind of lows. You can set it nice and low so that you're running tons of them to keep your system very, very responsive. So I can imagine Amazon probably has their server set to like a 45% or 40% system of CPU usage before they spin up another, since they're the ones probably running it. It's their system, they can afford it. Not to mention they want Amazon to load like that, because they know that people will easily just leave to go to another site to buy stuff if they're not loading fast enough. So the balancer now will again start sending all new data here until these two start coming down, and this one catches up, and then they can start distributing evenly again. So once these hit 65, it spins up a new one, sends all current traffic to there until they start to equalize again. Now we have the counter rule. If at any point one of these servers ever goes down to a point where, let's say, they hit 10% of their activity, 10 or even 15% of their activity, the CPU is running at 15%. Again, considering keeping aware of what's called idling CPU status. So you also want to be aware that all computers have a CPU idle rate, where they're never going to hit like 0% unless they're off or in standby. They're always doing something in the background. Just to keep in mind, you have the Apache server running that's listening for incoming requests. Remember that your Java system, the Java application you're running, is running an Apache server. It's Apache or Tomcat? I think it's the same thing.
Tomcat.
It's
Isn't Tomcat Apache? Yeah, Tomcat is Apache.
It's Tomcat.
Yeah,
Same thing.
Apache Tomcat. It's the same thing. Yeah. It's like these words were popping in my head. I'm like, they're the same thing, right? That's what I'm thinking of both. Yeah. So it's running an Apache Tomcat server. And so that's always running, listening for incoming requests. Even if there's none coming, it's still acting and still running on your system, listening for those requests. So this low end of the CPU needs to take into consideration the idling effect of the CPU as well. Maybe it's running at it idles at 5%. So if any of these servers ever hit to a point where they're at 15%, or on average, the average performance of all three is at 25%, we can say, okay, let's start killing one of the servers. We then mark the server for killing. What it'll do is it'll stop sending requests to that server, And once this server has no requests pending, so again, the balancer sends out a request and it's waiting to hear the request back so it can send back to the requester. So the balancer knows how many requests each server has. So the balance can be like, all right, you have no requests. Well, you still have requests. Let me finish those off. I'm not going to send you any new ones. Once it gets either one, it gets back all the responses or they time out. The server is then shut down. It goes through the shutdown process and gets taken offline to save that, again, bandwidth and resources. We don't need it. Why should we spend money and electricity keeping that system running at our idling rate of 5 to 10% when we don't need it? And so then we take that down. We have our 2 servers running, and let's say late at night on a weekday for NFL.com. So Wednesday nights at like 3 a.m, very few people are visiting NFL.com. There's no games going on. Most people are asleep. So you know what? We'll even knock down our system to run a single instance to manage all the requests at that time. So that's load balancing. That is what's called dynamic load balancing. That is load balancing based on server performance. You can also do what's called planned balancing. We're not really going to get into doing these because we're never going to actually be able to trigger any of these things. I don't think there's any way for us to actually put enough effort onto one of our systems to actually trigger these items. But knowing that these systems are in place are key for your discussions in the interview. So knowing what load balancing is, understanding server stress, these are just good terminologies and good things to be aware of. So that's dynamic load balancing. Most systems on that, and then on their back end, they also have something else that they can do as well, just called scheduled balancing. This is when, let's say, we know that we're going to get hit. How do you think that the NFL knows they're going to get hit hard this weekend?
Yes.
Why would that be?
I would expect so.
Because I've been informed that there's a sporting event happening.
And if you know this, it's probably safe to know that the NFL knows. Since, they're running.
Very
I would hope so.
It's gonna be interesting because you got the Olympics and you've got the Super Bowl on the same day.
True.
Really?
I think the Super Bowl still wins out. At least in America it does.
Yeah.
I would love to see the numbers of like Super Bowl on an Olympic year and on a non-Olympic year. See what those numbers are. See how much the Super Bowl actually loses or how much it does well. Especially, that'd just be fun to see. Anyway, so in that case, we can actually tell our system, hey, at let's say 9 a.m. or we'll actually say 9 a.m. What day of the week is Super Bowl on? Is it Saturday or Sunday? Sunday. So 9 a.m. Saturday, because people are going to start looking into things on Saturday. We're going to go ahead and just, screw it, spin up 4 more servers. And no matter what happens, maintain these, keep this minimum until 10 p.m. Monday. So we'll still use the dynamic load balancing. If these servers here ever go again above the 65%, go ahead and spin up more. But if we ever go down and go below the 25% and start killing servers, do not go below 5. Always maintain 5 no matter what happens, because we are ready that at any point we're going to get a rush, especially like maybe during a commercial or something. People are going to run on to start watching a replay. Maybe they're watching it on ABC or Fox or wherever they're streaming it, and then a cool play happens. Like, oh, I want to go see this again. I want to go share it. So they go to the website to go look it up and watch that play a couple times. So we want to make sure that we're ready to accept that hit as soon as it hits, instead of us trying to react to a sudden rush. Because even though we have that dynamic load balancing, those people who get in before that new server is up and running are still going to be experiencing the slow while that new server gets up and running. And this new server can still take about a minute to get going. It's an actual computer that is booting up, running its boot up processes, activating the system, and then the balancer has to be told, yep, I'm here. It has to be able to see it, know that it's there, and then start sending new requests. It can't send people that are already there to this new system. Only new requests can go to the new system. So there's still that you're going to see a little bit of lag when a system goes up. So if you're ever visiting a site and you're browsing and all of a sudden it seems kind of laggy, and then all of a sudden out of nowhere it seems really fast again, there's a good chance that that's what happened. The system it got hit by a bunch of people, started to slow down, so they spun up a new server, and now the server's active, and now you're seeing the improved performance. Hell, all those error messages we were just seeing from Openshift. Maybe we triggered a spin up of a sandbox server because we all started hitting it at the same time. Who knows? So these are the 2 main methods of load balancing and making sure that a server no matter how many people hit it, can scale. And this is the next big thing you want to know about with computer science. Another term that's just good to know, scalability. Someone give me a definition for that.
Scalability. I feel like
Yes.
oh my god.
The ability to grow dynamically.
Yeah,
Good.
that's pretty.
So you likes it? Anyone else want to give their own wording of it?
Because,
To
Scalability
scalability.
of
The ability to expand dynamically easily.
All right.
I mean, I would say the ability to adjust to growth, right?
Good.
Right,
Did
but
you have one?
scalability does not also, it not only means growing, but it also means contracting too.
Yes, that's what I was
Oh,
gonna say,
So
scalability.
you have
Goes
to
both
easily
ways.
scale up and scale down easily.
Yeah.
So that's what scalability means.
Yes. An efficient
Didn't
manner
think
to
of that,
grow
didn't think of that.
and
It's pretty-
to grow and reduce as needed. Yep, 100%. Scalability is being able to handle 1,000,000 requests and 100 requests effectively, not just being able to handle them. Because yeah, if we want to be able to handle any requests, we can just why not just set up 20 servers and have them running all the time at all times? I'll handle any request at all times and I'll never have to worry about it. But then again, during, like I said, during those night times where there's nobody really hit my site, I have like 19 servers that are really not doing a damn thing. And I'm having to pay for that. I have to pay for that electricity. Even if I was running it myself at my own location here in my building, I was running my own servers. I have 20 servers just in my building connected and running. I have to pay for all the electricity of that, maintenance on all the systems, making sure they're updated, that they're cooled. I have to make sure that they're temperature controlled and that they're clean. That's a lot of overhead. And so yeah, scalability is both being able to scale up and scale down easily, being able to handle both 1,000,000 requests and 100 requests efficiently. So that's what scalability is all about. Being able to grow and shrink as needed. So
Very cool.
OpenShift, one of the things that OpenShift does is try to make sure that, yeah, load balancing and scalability for your websites and your web applications is easier. They're trying to simplify scalability for your sites, at least on the side of load balancing. You still have to make sure your code is scalable enough that it can handle multiple requests and be able to handle all that. But at least on OpenShift's side, it's making sure that your load balancing side of it is scalable. Cool. All right. There's some key items of that. Back to here. Topology. And so most of our time, we're going to be spending time here on topology, and add is going to be our main two locations. But to add something, there are a couple ways we can add this. We can add from a Git repository. So we can actually give it a Git repo and it will load from there. There's some rules behind it. I'll tell you in a second. We can go ahead and use a container image that we've created. So we can upload a container image using Docker or Kubernetes to create a container. So again, that should be an application that can run in that container. That is something that we can, if we have the time for it, we can definitely look into creating containers, but I'm going to try to keep it simple with importing from Git. Because right now we're learning about OpenShift, not about containers yet. That could be something if we have time, we'll do later. So right now the focus is on OpenShift. We can load from developer catalog. So these are containers or instances that OpenShift has provided for developers. And we're going to use this one for our database system. It was pretty safe to say that a lot of site companies are using a MySQL database, right? I think it's safe to say that, right? It's a pretty common database to use.
Mm-hmm.
Safe assumption again? Yeah, being the free version of SQL. So.
Oh, we're so yeah.
Yeah, because of that, yeah, it's a very commonly used thing. So yeah, Red Hat provides a very simple image of a MySQL instance that we can just use. And so there's a lot of those there. They have a lot of those systems ready to go. They also have samples. We may even try to take a look and see if we can just pull one up quick, just to see what we can do.
Basic
Yeah.
Spring Boot.
Let's load that into our system quick. We'll load this in, we'll delete it on Monday, but this way we can just see what it looks like right from where we get it. So let's go into the samples and load up a basic Spring Boot. Cool. All right. This is an application. And this is what this little, we have a little, I want to say bubble around the application. So this right here is the application. this little circle right here with the glitched out OpenShift symbol, which I like that symbol personally. It's just cool looking to me. It's a glitched out OpenShift because it's shifted. So this is going to be starting to run up. It's going to be building it. You can even take a look at the logs, which this will be very helpful, by the way. Taking a look at the logs right here. So just again, to see how you get to that, when you click on the pod, that's what this is. This is your, not pod, this is your cluster, right? This is the cluster. So click on the cluster, you can see the pods are here. We'll talk about what the pods are in a second. When you see the builds here, we can click on the build view logs to see how it is progressing through the build. And at one point or another here, you'll eventually get the same Java messages you see when we run our IntelliJ open? It's not. IntelliJ. You'll see very similar kind of code or messages hitting that screen, similar to when we do our run from here. Run my application. You'll see very similar items as to what it shows up here as well. Go away. Run it. Keep picking on that to see what goes. Everything starting. There's too many requests. You reached your pull rate limit. Topic.com. Has Redshift hit the limits it's allowed to do with that?
You're having the same problem too, huh? I
Yeah.
am. I'm having the same thing.
Is there a certain number that we can do for Red Hat's sandbox? I hope not. We just have to sit and come back later to see when it finally triggered. Source Docker. Same thing, just keeps trying it 3 times. I'm just gonna try again. I feel like that's gonna be something we're gonna do later anyway. Probably not, because we're not gonna be using Docker Maven in SDK. Fun, so we'll use the sample. That sucks.
You know, you can try it's working. The Java one's actually working, so it's pulling it down
Give
now.
that a shot then. We'll leave this running anyway, but we'll go ahead and go back and we'll do another add and we'll do the Java sample. Watch us kill it now because we're all gonna do it. The node one,
I just did,
which one?
I did the Java, the one that's underneath basic Python. I just clicked the Java one.
I wonder what that does.
Builds and runs Java, Maven, and Open. I don't know what it does, but
Yeah, I'm more curious what the application is.
we'll see.
Before I load it, let's go take a look what it says. It doesn't tell me what it is.
What one are we grabbing?
Java,
behind a
but
little bit.
I'm curious what this is. I don't know what it's going to do. It's just a Java application, but I'm not sure what it's going to do with the internet. I'm
Red Hat
not
Open
sure what
JDK
it can do.
11.
Yeah.
Before you're doing that one, if you already did it, go with it. Before I do that one, I'm just going to do a Node.js because again, a simple hello world Node.js because that should be web-based. So I'm going to do that one.
I'll try that one too.
Don't do too many. You already have one going. I don't want you killing off another system. So
Well, it's ready to run. Oh, let me leave this one.
I don't think I got the right thing.
If this doesn't work, we'll have to go ahead and upload ours. That's kind of annoying, but whatever.
Oh, it does hello world for the Java.
Really?
Yeah, it just does hello world in the browser. It just
First
hello
time it shows
world.
that.
Yeah.
Again, that's, I think that's all these do. That's what it kind of said. So
Yeah.
I'm not getting the JavaScript one either. That's annoying. All right, you know what? I'm gonna kill those. So, oop, wrong button. Do that.
I think I grabbed the wrong one. What one are we getting again?
We were grabbing, there's 3 of them, just trying to see if either the Java, Spring Boot, or the Node.js works. I'm wondering if it's my account, if I'm just on a wrong instance or something, because neither one of mine are working. So go back to topology. I'm going to kill these, and we're going to go ahead and just build mine. I guess on this. Go back a second. I'm going to actually, I'll leave these running while I discuss the next part and just review the items. So I can use these for discussion at least.
Should we be downloading it with you now too, or just waiting until you're done?
You can pick one, it's fine, because it says that it's hitting its limit. The question is whether or not that limit is hourly, minute, or day. It could be per the minute, and then we're all, since several of us were trying to do the Java Spring Boot one at the same time, it could have timed out. So, yeah, builder.
I'm gonna wait then.
Yeah.
I'll grab the Node.js basic.
That's what I just grabbed. Yeah. So how do I?
But again,
Right.
we're gonna end up just building the Geeky Likes one anyway, so this is just to see if we can get something simple in there, and I wanted to show the visuals here. So, again, this right here is a cluster. The view logs is important to look at. I was hoping we'll run to the show, but again, we'll see it on when we run ours. And then you have services. The services is your local information, so you can see what port numbers they're running on for local hosts and stuff like that. When you have multiple systems in the same application, they will have different ports. So you see the Node.js is running on 301 and the Java one is running on 8081. What's beneficial about this is that you can have other applications in the same system that are considered local. So they can just be port based within a local host, which is really, really useful. And again, it allows you the ability to restrict incoming connections on those systems. So with your SQL, for example, you could tell it to ignore incoming signals from outside of the OpenShift internal network, intranet. So that way, if anyone was to somehow figure out the URL of where your SQL is hosted on OpenShift, they still wouldn't be able to connect it because they wouldn't be, their IP address that they're coming from would not match your OpenShift system. So the security would be still denied. So that is a really useful item there. This is that concept of application. So the outside ring that we see here, by the way, this is your application ring. This is how you connect things, items, and this helps with the binding them together and putting them in the same area. I can very easily so I'm going to do this. Edit application grouping. I can move this to a new application or say it's under no application. It has no connections. And now you can see it pops out and our Java app is still by itself and now by itself in its application bundle. So those are applications. We have our clusters and then pods. I was hoping one of these would run so I could show what a pod is. Ooh, hey, oh, kind of. So yeah, it failed. But a pod is the term that Red Hat is using to represent what I called a server. Remember the load balancing system that I talked about? Pods are what Spring Boot, what Red Hat refers to as its servers. So edit pod count, you can see deployments maintain the desired number of healthy pods. So how many instances of this application do I want to have running? I can tell, hey, keep 2 running at all times. Hey, keep 3 minimum running at the same time. And that's how many I can say I want that many running. So like we talked about the schedule system, I could say, you know what, all the time, 24 hours a day, I have a decent amount of traffic. So I'm going to say at minimum, always have 3 servers running. Then refer to the dynamic load balancing system after that. If I am not a high running company or anything that have a lot of high traffic, I can tell it, you know what, maintain 1 at all times. Yep. You can even actually have it set to 0. And what that will do is, yes, if the attention to your server ever gets to a point when no one's visiting it, it will kill it. And what will happen is that your site, when someone goes to visit it and there's no pods running, they will see a long waiting period. because it'll spin up that first instance, and they'll either get a confirmed or they'll have to just refresh the page to then see it. That can be a really good time saver and money saver. But of course, you have that bad user experience, of course, of someone visiting the site and not being able to get to it right away. And seeing a very long wait time of over a minute. So just be aware of that. But those are things you can do with OpenShift, which is really cool. Another thing we do is for graphical uses, I'm going to bring this back into the application. Shift drag. There we go. I'm going to use this little arrow here, and I'm going to create a, give me the arrow, thank you, a visual connector. And so these are visual items. These do nothing to the system. These are for you. It allows you to say that these two are connected in some way. I'm going to click on it, and I can adjust how it's arrowed. Well, I thought I could have it two directional, but not. I thought I could. Can't remember now. Here. I can
You
point
just
it
drag
in,
an arrow out from the node one to the Java one.
and make it two directional.
No,
that is how you do it.
Oh, there it
You're right,
is.
That's how I did it. Yep,
Nice.
I couldn't remember how I did it. I was like, I knew I did this. Yep. Thank you. Yeah. So now it's bi-directional. And these two communicate with each other. I can say it's one directional by just saying, hey, just the I can't get it. Pull that off. Move that. Delete connection. Yep. And say that, yeah, the Java sends data to the Node.js. It's always a one-way connection. Node.js will respond, but it's always going to be Java initiating the connection to the Node.js system. If it's the difference, I can of course say, never mind. I'm going to click on this guy, get rid of it. Say it's the other way, that the Node.js server is always the one that's communicating and sending data to the Java system that will respond, but the Java system will never be the one to send something to the Node.js system. It's always a reactive system. The Java system's reactionary, the Node.js is active. It's the one sending the requests. And so again, these don't do anything in the system. They're visual aids and help to organize your applications, because in larger applications, especially if you get into microservices, these can get a bit scary. They can be almost like a web of applications talking and communicating with each other, and knowing how they communicate with each other. Even though these arrows don't necessarily do anything in the system, they are useful to understand the flow of the data and how the items communicate and who communicates with who. So that's something that's very useful in this. Next up, that I want to make sure you understand as well, is we also have our routes. And so routes, or routes, I'm going to call them, but routes. This is how you make sure that the item is accessible through the internet. When we create a session, when we create our application, we'll be able to have the option during creation to say, hey, create a route for us automatically during the instance. But at any time, if you didn't automatically create one or want to create one on your own or create a new one, that is done under administrators. We go to administrator quick and see networking and routes. And so here I can create routes that'll have this kind of prefix and then something else. So create route. That's it. Route. We don't have a public host name. I don't own one, so I can't use it. But if you did have a domain name that you owned, you could put that here. Path, we're going to say this is my path / test. And the service going to connect to will be the Node.js, we'll say. So that's going to be the base route : 3001 / test. That's what I'm creating right now. Or target port, sorry. So whenever I do this, I would say, yep, that's going to be target port 3001. So if I go to the host name that we saw / test, it's going to go to port 3001 on this server and load that up. And we will see if I'll get into it, but for the moment, I don't know if this is actually available on Sandbox, because I tried to test it out during the hackathon. I never got figured it out yet. But OpenShift does help with SSL and HTTPS setups. I haven't done it myself with the Sandbox. I don't know if the Sandbox can do it, but it is something that I know is hiding in there somewhere. They have SSL tools in there. So if anyone wants to get into that, feel free, especially if you feel like the application you're building should be SSL. So financial based or a medical based, definitely something to consider HTTPS configurations. Of course, if you do that, your Java system will also have to be set up for HTTPS, which I don't know if we did. I don't think we did that on the auth system. So just be aware of that. All right, so then you can click create and we'll see we have a new route. Move forward. And that's what's really nice again about OpenShift. They avail the ability to just easily create routes that are public on the internet that can be directed to other applications and other port numbers so quickly is really, really beneficial. So we'll get more into how these work as we go, but just again, seeing some of these key items just quickly is going to be very helpful. All right. Fortunately, mine isn't working. Fun as hell, but we'll figure that out in a second. So let's go back to my topology and see if anything actually decided to build, or if I have two unfunctioning applications. So we really just have to use mine. Yep, no, does not like me for some reason. Fine. All right. So I'm going to clean up my systems so you can see how I do this now. So I'm going to click on one of these actions. I need to go ahead and delete this deployment. Delete dependent objects. Delete it. Same thing with this guy. I'm going to do the same thing. Delete deployment. Do it again. And just to make sure I clean everything up, I'm going to head over to builds quick and kill both of these builds. Delete build config. Build config. Go back to administrator. I'm just going to clean up everything. So if you did these two, you can. Storage. This is some volume claims. Good. They got deleted already. Storage classes. That's fine. Yeah, those classes are correct. Volume snapshots. Good. So those got deleted. Just want to make sure. Awesome. Cool. So we can go back to administrator. I'm sorry, developer. All right. So the way we're going to be uploading these items, again, later on, if we have time, we'll go into creating containers, creating images. That is a little more, I want to say, developer intensive or somewhat like code base because it involves more server configuration stuff. So it's a little more, not really code based, but just, how do I word it? Software engineer, not software engineer. Really just kind of like tech support or something like that. Like it's more computer based, not developer based. So like, what's that?
Like DevOps?
DevOps, thanks, that's the word. That's what it is, yeah. So it's more DevOps, where you're doing computer configurations, not coding. You're doing command, and you'll do a lot more CLI commands and setting up an environment and an instance or a image. So that's kind of the big key thing there. So it's a little more intensive building Docker images, Docker image configuration files, making sure it loads it correct and has all the pieces it needs in order to successfully run your application. So we'll see if we have time for it. We'll get to that. It's not as important as being able to just, again, configure OpenShift. Being able to utilize OpenShift, configure it, get your application up there, make sure it communicates with your pieces, and make sure it's running. That's the most important part here. But we'll see if we have time. We'll definitely get to it if we do. To actually upload an application from, and this will be the last thing we do because I want to give you guys again the last hour, sorry, 30, is we need to build our application. So let's go back to our system here. We see that it runs. I'm going to actually kill the server. We actually want to build our project. All right. Where's my notes for my build command? Just Maven clean deploy, I want to say. The command is just
Gradle W build.
Are we using Maven? Wait, no,
You're
thought we were
using
using
Gradle.
Gradle.
God,
Yeah,
that's
using
why
Gradle.
I'm looking at the wrong notes. Right, no, Gradle. God. Thank you. Brain moment there. I'm like, why can't I find my notes on this? Because I
You
want the
typing
Gradle ones.
something?
Is this where you want to make the deployments folder and then do the
We are
Gradle
going to do that,
build
yeah.
and
We
then-
build first, then we move it to the deployments folder. Yep.
Yeah, right. Yep.
I just gotta remember my build command. Where is it?
I think build
Dot.
clean, great,
/Gradle W build.
that I thought it's clean. Oh, no, that's Maven, Maven clean.
Yeah, it is. Deploy clean is Maven. That's what I was
Yeah.
looking up because I forgot. Yeah, that is right. I forgot that Gradle W is Gradles is very simple. No, don't get me wrong. There are more complex variations of this if you want to set settings and set up, tell it how to build it. But we just want to build a very standard build. What this is going to do is build it in the build folder. Build, and then let's see, it's under libs. Yep, libs. And so it's this one right here, snapshot, I believe, if I remember correctly, not the
Yeah.
plane. It's this one right
That's
here.
snapshot. Yeah, it's that
Yep.
one.
This is the one we need. This is what Openshift is going to be looking for in our repo. What I want to tell you, though, is that the build folder is hidden by default. It is not included in your repo pushes, by the way. So if you would leave this here and push it, it still won't show up because GitHub does not look for this folder. We do not want to include this folder, though, because we don't need these items. We don't need all these folders. We just need this guy. So what we are going to do is in our app, we are going to build a new folder directory called deployments. This is the folder that Openshift is going to be looking for when loading from a Git repository. This is also a new folder, so GitHub will look for it. We're going to put this snapshot jar inside of this deployments folder.
Just drag and drop, or are we going to copy?
Drag and
it?
drop it.
Drag and drop
Cool.
it.
Yeah, because again, you're not going to be using that file from that direction anyways, the build. So
No, and then they also, if you make any changes, you have to rebuild it anyways, so.
Yep.
it's-
So yeah. One thing that can be useful again on here is that over time now you want to start updating the version number, which I believe is under the application properties, but I don't think we put it there by default. So we have to add that, I think. Yeah, version number is not there. So I will double check the syntax, the name for this, but I will double check with the version number where that gets pulled from.
And
You guys know
just,
that for Monday.
Just to point out, since it's a Java file, you can actually go into the command prompt and actually just use Java to actually run this, and it
Java,
should just
yeah,
run like a
Java,
normal
yeah.
app.
Type that in. Oh yeah. So you can
Yep.
test it locally if you want by just doing Java and then the name of the application, the location. But what we do now is do git status. So you can see that that item is now added. So you see deployments is that there is now there.
Which one is the command for Gradle again? Sorry.
Just /Gradle W build. Right there.
Oh, this jar file is pretty big.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yep.
This is the longest push it's ever taken.
You got everything in there. You've got all your libraries.
It's the
you've
whole
got every-
application. It is the
got the whole
standalone
thing
item.
there.
So, yeah, it's the standalone. So
So it's
Where
it's basically it's like the app within the app almost.
kind of, but I will say it is less. It's smaller than the actual app itself because it's all been compressed and compiled down to assembly and like
Oh,
English code.
okay, all right.
So it shouldn't be as big as the whole project itself, but it is the whole project. It is a standalone version of the app that can
And
run
I
on
think
its own.
I think you can even open that with a compressor because it's compressed files. I think you can open up and look at some of the files and
I'll leave it.
everything.
Not going to do that. Rabbit
I
hole.
know, but I'm just saying.
So git add and then git push. And starting from now, after this push here, this is now considered our production branch. We're now on a production branch because as soon as this goes up and as soon as we start loading this to OpenShift, once we connect this to OpenShift, any new pushes we make will automatically update OpenShift, especially if we do this development item. Any pushes will cause, let me just finish the sentence.
Yeah, sorry.
Any pushes we do will cause OpenShift to check for this and look at it. So even if we don't update it, meaning if we don't do the build and put the item here, it won't actually make any changes to our system. OpenShift will still detect the push and attempt to say, hey, do I need to update something? So just be aware of that. And it might actually still rebuild it even though it's the same. Matt, question.
Not a question, just noting you didn't commit, so you didn't just push it now.
That's why I said everything up to date. Thank you.
Hey Cliff, I was able to get in.
Oh, good.
Use a
Exciting.
different email address.
I've got my dash M. Now let's do the push. All right, so so this Thursday, we're gonna start making a, like I said, a dev branch now. And so we should only push to main now when we're ready to actually push to the main system. So on our development branch, when we're ready to actually update our OpenShift application on dev, we'll actually do the build, move the file into deployments, and then merge it into main with that new deployment file. So moving forward, we're going to be doing everything from dev moving forward. So with that being said, get checkout -b. So starting on Thursday, any new changes we make to this system will now be done on the dev branch. And only when we build on Mondays and make a new snapshot will we actually merge to main. Sound good? So we're going to follow that common development practice. So moving forward with your applications and your projects, as soon as you get to a point where you're starting to upload this to OpenShift, or even with the sandbox, just start. And really, you can start that now. Start with that process of coding on dev, merging the dev, and then when you have something that you say, this is really good, I'm liking what it's doing, it's working as I expect. It's not done, but it's working as expected. Move it to merge that to main. All right. So you can start following that common flow of the computer development, or application development. All right. So now let's head back to our OpenShift. I'm gonna mute you, Aridin. So go ahead and click Add, import from Git. You're gonna need that Git repo URL. So yeah, this guy right here, cohort 12 geeky likes. Go back there. We'll now see that I have that deployments folder. So got that. Grab the repo link, paste it in. I'm going to go ahead and check it, and you'll see it recognizes, hey, this is Red Hat OpenJDK 11, or at least it's JDK 11. So it's going to pull this environment. So it recognized that Nick got a question.
Oh, I mean, it's kind of related. It is related to what you're doing, but do you actually need the link for the entire repo, or could you just do the deployments folder? If I'm understanding correctly, that snapshot jar file.
No, it won't, because it's actually looking for the deployment folder. And so if you give it the deployment folder, it won't find a deployment folder. It's already inside of it.
Oh, so you have to give the parent directory of the deployment folder. Okay.
Yep.
I was
It
wondering
is
if
something that you could test. I think I'm going with Jim, but yeah, someone, if you want to, you could test creating a build folder of your own that is not protected by or production folder. We'll call it production. So create a folder called production, put your deployment folder in there, and then maybe you could give it like this, like /production, like that, and see if it takes it. So,
yeah, but I was also curious that if you pulled all your code out,
but it might be looking. Go ahead.
I was thinking if you pulled all your code out of main and just left deployment, would work, because all it needs to do is just find the deployment.
I believe so, but I do also, the main thing is also, I think it also needs the .git folder, so I don't know if that /production concept would work, because it might need the .git folder.
Oh, that's true
to
too.
know that's a Git repo. So I don't know. Again, this is things I've been testing with Red Hat. I don't know how much it needs, but the way you know that an item is a repo is from the .git folder that is hiding there. So Red Hat might need that. I don't know that yet, but definitely feel free, if you try it, let me know that if you put your deployments folder in another folder and give it that folder, if it'll still detect and work. That is something I'm very curious on. That would be cool. Then yeah, I wouldn't look at all the other files. Anyway, so get that. You see, it detects that it is a Java application. So it's going to pull up, and it also knows that it's Java 11, like we did with our Start Spring Boot item. And so it pulls the Red Hat OpenJDK environment that's going to load this application into it. So it's already got an environment predisposed for it, ready to go with this application. Like, hey, I know what you are. Here's an environment that is set up to run Java 11, Java JDK 11 applications. See that, build and run Java applications using Maven and OpenJDK 11. All right, we can see we're going to go ahead. We're going to give the same application name for myself, cohort 12 Geeky Likes app. chapter 12 likes. Also for anyone here who decided to, instead of building out Geeky likes, just want to have their personal project, you can use my repo. It is not authenticating. So my repo is public, so you can use my repo to load your application. So just be aware though, if you use that, you won't be able to follow along and push your own updates. It'll update whenever I make changes. So it'll auto update when I do things. So just be aware of that. But if you want to be able to follow along and play with it, you can definitely use my repo to at least play and practice. All right, so we got that. There is more, so I will say before I move any forward, there is going to be more things we're going to be modifying on this, including environment variables, but for the moment we're fine. Question?
I was gonna say, should we be pushing if we were started working on our own apps, should we be pushing our own apps in there and just continue to keep going through them?
Well, yeah, that's what I would do after class. Yeah, definitely push your own as like a homework thing. Yeah, definitely push your own as long as you can run it. Yeah, 100%.
Okay.
Again, you have this sandbox for 30 days. So definitely, and then you, as soon as the 30 days ends, you can just reinstantiate a new sandbox and start over. So it's a great place to kind of just test it out and especially get it online and get feedback from other people because it'll be public on the internet. So I do this, you see we can do a deployment, which is one of the things we want. So we want a deployment of this, it's an app deployment. It's not a configuration and it's not a serverless. It is a straight up application deployment. We're going to say, yep, create a route for the application. Just start with a standard route. If we look quick to make sure though, it is targeting port 8080. Is that the one we were using before?
Yes.
Yes.
Good, so then we're going to keep it that. I like to just personally check it to make sure it's the same route that I've been using. I'm good with that. So minimize that. I will say that
Does
ahead.
it pull from your environment variables? So if you decided you wanted to change the port to something else, it will pull that port or no?
Not 100% confident in that per
Okay.
se. Yeah, not 100% confident on that one. I think it can, but you would just have to tell it this. I don't think the target port will know to put that in. So if you're using a different port, if you set a different one, you may have to type that in. I think this is defaulted. These are the yeah, these are the 3 defaults. These are not like, this is not autocomplete from me, like predictive text from like past stuff. This is the normal ports that the environment that Red Hat pulled in recognizes as common ports for Java. So if I wanted to, I could even set it up. If this was a web system, like a website based, I could set it to port 80, which is HTTP. But we want to use the default 8080 because that's what our environment, that's what our application is configured for. So our application properties, which we haven't configured, but yeah, we set it up for 8080, so it's going to use 8080. If we were to change it, you would have to type in what it is. All right, good there. Click create. Now watch it make me look insane by not working.
Ta-da!
Actually, shoot, yeah, there it goes.
So far, so good. It's not trying to pull
Yeah.
anything from Docker, which is great.
Just say you could use the one that you used, the demo one that we used for the hackathon. That worked.
This is the
That was
same
guaranteed.
thing. That's why it should work. So
Yeah.
it's what I created for the hackathon was just a slimmed down version of Geeky Likes. There we go. Yeah, it's not pulling from Docker, it's pulling from the image registry of OpenShift. Got it.
But it does generate one though.
But yeah, it carries an image just not from the Docker API, but from OpenShift's repository. So
yeah, it does say Docker though on
the
it over
container.
here.
Oh yeah, again,
Generating the
OpenShift does
Docker
use
file,
Docker.
so-
But what was
yeah.
happening before is that the samples were coming from Docker's repository.
Mm.
They weren't images stored on OpenShift's system. They were stored on Docker system.
Mm.
So that's how we're getting it. This one is being pulled from Red Hat, from OpenShift's servers. But yes, it is a Docker image. We're just not using Docker servers. So Docker.
No,
is
yeah,
one of
yeah,
those-
no, you're right. It generates this. You could actually use a Docker container already pre-made and built and then
and
put it
uploaded
in
to
here.
Docker services. So Docker,
Yeah.
again, very similar to like Git, or not really Git, but similar to like even Maven or something like that. Docker is a open source as a service system again, where Docker itself, the application, the service, what it does is all free, but they offer their hosting system where you can host your Docker images on Docker systems with a cloud environment. So you can host your images on Docker system and pull those or make them publicly available to others. But as you saw, that there can be limits to how many times people can pull from it. And that's another thing that they offer. Any public images that people upload to Docker servers can be pulled by anybody as long as you have the limit or the access to, or the, if you're allowed from Docker to be able to pull those. So Docker has an API as well. So what was happening is that I was trying to pull from Docker system and it wasn't doing it. All right, and then it's creating a repo locally here in Open and Red Hat's environment. So it's going to create, it's actually recreating or cloning it down. So you can see here, successfully pushed image repository. So it's creating a repo here locally. More here. Ended. Go back to topology for a second. Build finished. You can see that there was a crash loop. So again, so the build finished. The build was successful. It did successfully build the application and build the environment. It then ran the run command. And if I was to run the command on my system without MySQL running, what's going to happen?
It'll crash.
It'll crash.
Yep. We don't have a MySQL system running yet. So you can see here, it's trying to restart. Dang it.
You can look at the other log, I think.
Now, do we want to see the pod log? So this is actually one of the instances trying to run, and we see there's Spring. So we see this very familiar item, the Hikari pool and all that stuff, processing. The driver did not receive any packets from the server, SQL. Communications link failure for MySQL. And so that's what we were expecting. We were expecting that. This is eventually going to stop trying. It's going to try to launch the application a couple times. This is OpenShift again. One of the settings it has that on a failure, it'll just try to reboot it, just thinking it's like a fluke or something. It'll try a couple times to see if it gets going. Only after it fails like a certain number of times, will say, "Hey, I can't get this to run. There's a problem." So this will eventually stop attempting. At the moment, it's going to try a couple times to see if there's a problem. So on Monday, what we're going to do is we're going to then upload we're going to create a SQL system instance, and we're also going to create a new version of our application to utilize. Actually, I'm trying to think if it's already built in. We want to make sure we use environment variables now for our SQL system, because that's what we're going to use moving forward. We won't know the actual settings of our SQL system. So in our current local system, we have these. We have our, not those, these guys. We have our SQL settings of the location, the username, and the password saved in our application properties. When we create our SQL instance on OpenShift, we're not going to know these items per se. We can get them, but at the same time, we want to make sure that anytime we can switch to a new instance or create a different SQL system at any point. And so what we can do is we can use what are called environment variables. These are variables that are stored on the system that will then be passed to Java, say, hey, here's what you want to use for this system. So we're going to use those. And so we'll do that on Monday as well. So Monday is going to be updating our Java system to use environment variables and then creating a SQL instance on our OpenShift and connecting those two. By the end of the class on Monday, the goal is to actually be able to send API requests to our application. It took longer than I expected. Dang it. So we have 30 minutes, I guess I can give you guys if you need it or whatever you guys want to do. But any questions before we move forward, before we stop this? So
I have a question about React.
oh, sure.
My personal application, the way that I created, I was not planning right, so I had to refactor for router. But I have many different components for like the main page, and I wanted to ask you which one is like the best practice. Should I? Is there like a
So this actually is 100% React, nothing to do with Spring Boot at all.
No, nothing to do with that. Sorry.
Nothing to do with OpenShift at all. Okay, sorry. So no, I thought you were trying to get like React information on OpenShift. Before we go into that, anybody have questions on OpenShift? Yeah, as soon as I just make sure nobody has questions on this, because I want to stop the recording or maybe pause the recording potentially. But any questions on OpenShift, and then we can move to React if no one does. All right, cool. Like I said, yeah, you're expecting an error, but the main thing I want to make sure you guys are clear on is that this should be complete. Your build should have a check mark, but your pod should fail. Because again, the pod is the environment that's attempting to run the program. This item is the system building the environment that the pods are going to replicate. So each pod is going to take this build and then attempt to run that build. And so each pod will take a copy of this build and run it. That's what the builds are. So the builds is a completed or constructed constructed version of the environment and the application. A pod will then take that build and attempt to actually run it and actually run the application inside of the environment. And this is where Java can fail. That's where we want to see. So we do want to see, yes, the crash loop back off is fine. That's what we're expecting right now because we don't have a SQL system for it. But the build should be green check mark, and you should have a route, and you should see these 3 services here.
Those are the 3 services. I mean, I could go to any of those ports to go to this service, just one.
Technically,
port?
but the 2 other ports won't respond because you didn't set up your Java application to respond to those ports. So your Apache
Right,
Tomcat won't be
that's the
listening.
one. I wonder why it shows all
Apache
3
Tomcat.
though.
Those are the default ones for the environment. Again, that environment we pulled. I actually also realized, again, I did the same thing like I did with the area code. Even though it showed the 8080, I didn't type it in, so it just took the defaults. I didn't
Yeah.
explicitly say just 8080, so it took the 3 from the drop-down menu and said, all right, you don't want any, you're not going to tell me which one you want. I'm going to use all 3.
I'm gonna use, yeah, okay.
If you just want the one, type in the 8080, but again, not a big deal. And I want to see these.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's going to keep, and I will say for a while, it's going to keep rebooting it. And what it'll also do is going to exponentially grow the time frame that it'll wait before trying again. So it might try a couple more times tonight before it finally gives up altogether because the wait time is like over a day. Just give it some time, it'll eventually stop rebuilding and it's fine. And even then, like I said, it's not a big deal. We're going to be working on it. And if you really want to at the time, which you want to do, and actually what we probably should do, so we're going to right click on it, do edit pod count and set it to 0. For the moment, we don't want it creating any pods. So we're not going to create any pods for the moment. We're just going to let it sit idle until we're ready to put the SQL up later on.
I also think it's due to no activity, automatically will like kind of go to sleep.
It can. I don't know if it's set up for that, but yeah, I think it will.
Yeah.
Because of the sandbox environment. We haven't set up any rules to tell it not to do that to maintain a 1. Yeah, but that's it for now for OpenShift. So now Eridan, you have. Let me go ahead and I don't have to pause it. That's fine. It's React related, and you guys are doing React. So now I can ask you a React question. So now I'm in the right state of mind. So
Yeah, so the React router, you have like to kind of point out with each component that you're gonna use for the specific route. But I have many components that I want to use on the home page. So I was thinking on doing like 2 ways. Like I was trying to research a way to do it. I could either create like a home.js component and from that component call all the other components that is part of the home.
or practice. But go ahead.
That's the component. Okay.
It sounds like it, but again, let me know what your other thought is.
I found on Stack Overflow a bunch of people saying that you could actually render a lot of different components using a small function on the route itself. But you already answered me. I just wanted to know
hold on,
which one is like normal.
Before I say that that's the most common way you see it, but yeah, depending on how complex it is, the end result. So you can put a function inside of the router tag. The main thing is that at the end, though, you should get the end result or return result of that function should be a JSX result. So it does not actually have to have a component. Just the end result of whatever gets returned from that function should be JSX. So you can have a function inside of the route under where it says, I think it's element or something. What's the term for it? Hold on. Demo. Why is that terminal so big? Down, please. If I go to my routers, trying to remember the key term. Element. So under element, you can definitely run a function there as long as the function returns either a component or a JSX value, which again has a parent component in there, which again, the parent component could just be a div though. So just to make sure it's clear, we can see it. So here, right here where you see home or news, instead of giving it an actual component, I can give it a function. The function just has to return a JSX element, JSX values. Just like how all these components do. So home, even though it has the component tags, all home actually is a function that returns JSX. Remember? So technically, yes, you can do that if that makes more sense to you and makes more sense overall to give it a function instead of a. I mean, that would be very complex. Where yes, there isn't one parent component that fits as its home item. So yeah, the most common thing you'll see is just, yeah, a component there. What's required is just JSX.
I put on the chat. That's what I found online. You do
Yep.
path, like, and then render, small function with props, and just
Yeah, I think render is the older term they used to use for a router. I think the more modern one now is element.
Okay.
Yeah, element
Yeah,
just
but
expecting JSX.
I think that if I create a home component, it's gonna be easier
I
to
think so.
set up
That's what I'm
everything.
familiar with. Yeah. And
Okay,
yeah,
thank you.
again, since again, the end result of it has to be JSX, there's gonna be a parent tag, a parent component. And so, yeah, for me, just, it makes sense to do this. That way I can just go find the home file. If there's a function there, it just feels weird to me. That's just, again, that could also just be my.
Yeah, I
familiarity.
didn't like that either, but I don't know, like I have read somewhere
Yeah.
that you should do components
Yeah,
separate
which is
all the time.
That's exactly what you're seeing there in that item there is just this JSX, and that's technically what we're doing in home. So we go quick to home quick. So we look at the home item. All we do here is we have a div instead of fragment, and then we have a button, which is a JSX component. We have our buttons, and we have that counter boxes there, right? So that's really all that's doing. You're just returning a JSX, bunch of JSX bunch of components inside of a JSX fragments. So it's no different than just doing a single component and putting all that in there. So you can just have the home component have that exact code, the first fragment tag and the closing fragment tag. That can be the return statement of your home component. It just looks messy to me instead of just seeing home and seeing that in there. So.
Yeah, I actually already did that, but
Yeah.
I thought it was better too, but I found that
You're not
function.
gonna-
I
there's
was
no
like,
performance
what,
benefit.
which one should I use? You know?
There's no performance benefit. Yep. The idea that that's just an inline component. That's a nameless component. That's the term I'm looking for. You know how we have nameless functions when we do our Axios stuff? So when we do our Axios stuff, developers, right here. So we have the Axios.get, and then, don't wait, that's not the right one I'm thinking of. Map, that's what I'm thinking of, sorry. Display developers, here we are. This right here, this whole thing right here, this is what's called a nameless function. It is a function. You can see we have that equal sign with the arrow, just like we have up here. And dev here is this parenthesis. So this is the same, this is a function, and this is the contents of the function. Just instead of giving it a name, like this is a named function, this is what's called a nameless function, or a lambda function is another term that's been used. This is another term that's used. It's actually the original term. Nameless functions used to be called lambda expressions or lambda functions.
That's
what he's doing
it
there, in that he's doing a nameless component, because again,
I
you
saw
look at the top
lambda
here.
a lot, and I didn't know what that was.
Yeah, lambda is just the old school terminology for nameless functions. But you see up here, we have our props arrow bracket. If you look at that code you sent, render equals props arrow parenthesis. So it's just a nameless component. That's all it is.
All right, cool. Thank you.
Yep. But whatever makes more sense to you is where you go. They both will work. For me, that looks messy to me because I just see a bunch of components inside there. I'm like, nah.
Yeah, I didn't like that either.
Yeah, I like seeing a single component, and if I want to know what that component shows, I will go look at that component. Awesome. Stop share. All right. 10 more minutes, 10, 15 more minutes. Any questions or anything else?
I have a question.
Go for it, Jim.
I know this is relatively, I have an idea of this, but doing like algorithms and doing like HackerRank tests during an interview, making your variable names and things like that, is it okay just using I and J? I realize I would want to use bigger terms, but I don't want to sit and fumble over the keyboard making, making variables and things, making them comprehensible, because I could be wasting time trying to retype things that I'm trying to say, So I'm trying to figure out like where is
I already know the question.
I'm sorry.
I'll give you the answer now. No worries.
I'm sorry.
I'm always, especially I'm trying to do that for the interview too. Keep your questions simple. As soon as you get the point across, let them decide if they need more info. I think so. Yeah, I and J. Using those kind of items, I and J, KX, all of those short items for like looping structures and stuff. I have a love-hate with those things. I and J annoy me. I can get okay. I'm okay with when used as an index. That I'm okay with. If I see people use I for an index, I'm okay. Because that's literally what it is. It actually is meaningful. I means index. That's why we use I instead of A, B, X, C, Z, whatever. We do
I,
I
J,
in our
and
for
K for
loops.
3 for loops.
Right, but I don't like those because J and K are just they don't have a meaning other than just they're after I, and I've already used I. So I actually
Sure,
hate
we
those.
jitterate.
Yeah,
Then L and then M.
I hate those.
Yeah. they're
I
For
okay.
me,
agree.
once I
I
go
hate
into
them as
nested
well.
items, what I would say my
Then we
I and
jitterate.
J, my I and J for nested arrays is actually COL and ROW, because that's technically what's happening in a nested array or a nested
Okay.
collection. When you're doing more than one item, they're really acting as the first outside loop is your column or is the row for each iteration. So like we did with the organizing the balls, we saw how those things were in a square format. That first loop through that system was handling each row or each container. So row, for me, and the second one I use COL for column. And so row and col, those are small and those are still very widely recognized by the coding community. And then if you somehow are dealing with a triple nested item and you need K, as Evan pointed out, that would be depth for me, DEP. I might even type out depth, DEPTH, because that's what the third item goes. So the first item, you get your row, the second item, you get the vertical slice, and then the third one is actually going back through it. I don't know if that's the exact order, but yeah.
But what
I
about
was
like
trying to-
variable names?
Trying to
Obviously,
imagine a 3D or a three-dimensional array is a little tricky to get exactly how they're lined up. But that is what it is. A three-dimensional array is literally a cube. If you're getting beyond that, you should be functioning in this. You should no longer be using anymore. If you go beyond K, you're inefficient. Once you're you shouldn't even need K. You should only ever go two. For me, you only go 2 loops in, and then the third, and then after that, if you need to do a third loop, you should write a function that does a single loop of that element. So you take that third array that you now have, that third collection you have, send that to a function that can restart with I, can go back to I again. Because now we're dealing with indexes. So that's my kind of way I look at it.
But what about like variable names? I mean, I know if I'm doing a counter, I'll just call it counter, some easy ones, but what are things like variable names that I can use instead of like A, B? You know, I don't want to make them too complicated because
Well, that's why I'm giving you these simpler ones: column, row, counter. Those are fine, because the main thing I want to make sure is very, very clear. I and J, while I'm okay with I and J is very much student used variables. They are very prevalent in tutorials and walkthroughs and student instructed items. So when you're using I and J, it can definitely come off all the time. It comes off as new, as a greenhorn on computer science. But if you start using more robust or more fleshed out names for looping structures, it shows an air of understanding and an air of familiarity with code and the familiarity of what the systems do. So avoiding I and J and K is going to just look a little better and look a little more polished. And so that's why I'm saying, for me, yeah, let's say I don't know, there's nothing that really fits in my head and I don't want to write anything too fancy because I'm going to be typing it a bit. That's why I use row and col. It's 3 letters. Row and column. Counter is not that bad, or counter is still not a bad item, and it's easy to type in. Counter is very easy to type.
Num okay.
What's that?
NUM.
Num,
okay?
that's fine. Yep, num is fine.
I'm just
Yep,
looking for
num.
quick, I mean, I just don't want to go through exhaustive typing when I could use the typing
Well,
to
again,
code
yes.
and actually, you know, use my time more efficiently.
But yes, and that's the main thing is if you're dealing with something that you're going to be typing a lot, just try to keep it under within 5 characters. Usually, is kind of like a rule of thumb I do: 5 to 6 characters.
Okay.
Come up with something that is relevant within 5 to 6 characters.
All right.
Because later on, you can always use a refactor system to then rename them to something more beneficial, and then do your bigger typing later on when you're doing small modifications. In the beginning, yes, because you're going to be typing this thing constantly, make it something smaller so you can get through the code quicker without having to waste time typing these long variables in the beginning. Understand that in a company, at some point, you do want very long descriptive variables, while knowing are useful and good for readability.
Oh yeah.
So
yeah.
not being afraid of them is key.
Yeah. I'm just under the gun in an interview versus if I'm just doing my regular job, I can certainly just go whatever I want with my variables.
For me, like, again, I will say I'm not too worried about it because I'm a fairly quick blind touch typer. I don't worry so much about length of variable names because I do type a bit. So unless the variable name hits over 10 characters, it doesn't really slow me down. Small brag. Minor bragging here.
I just fumble over some keys every so often,
Yeah.
so I just don't want to
And
waste
so
time.
yeah, in that
on
case for you, I would keep your variables during the typing session to 5 minutes. Sorry, 5 characters.
5 characters.
5 minutes to type out a variable. There you go.
Don't make your
Yeah.
string S either.
What's that, Evan?
Don't make your string S.
No, please no. No S and no STR.
Oh, no
Output is
STR
way better.
either. That's
I
not
don't,
good.
yeah, STR, because that actually is a data type in some older languages. So they used to use STR instead of typing out the whole word string. So, and it is and that would be more used as an abbreviator towards the actual variable name.
Yeah,
So
I do that.
I can't remember the naming convention that's from. It was I used it a lot in Visual Basic back in high school, but it's actually a naming convention to use STR and then the variable name, or STR underscore that, like INT or num and then the variable name. So there are some 3-letter abbreviations that are used for that. And so I try to avoid STR because I see that. So for me, output is a very key string variable for me. So
No,
if I need to build a string, 9 times out of 10, if you ask me if I'm building a string, it's for output. And so I will call it output. If I'm trying to read a string, it's most likely my input. So I will call it input and output for my strings, are my 2 common string names.
No, you were right, because it would do like STR name, and we'll STR
first name, STR last name. Yep. Oh yeah, that was,
like that, knowing
that was
it's a
my
string.
intro to coding.
I remember those old days like that.
That note, gotta love some of the input variables that HackerRank uses, like string S.
I hate them with
or
passion.
int A.
Yeah. What's actually interesting though is in the function name, because you have access to the declaration, you can actually, as long as that line isn't locked, you can change the variable name.
Yeah.
So don't, if it'll make it better for you and you'll actually code better, go ahead and change those. I don't remember who I just did it with, but Leah actually was messing, not Leah, someone here, I think, I can't remember who it was, but I was helping them. Yeah, they had in their IntelliJ, they put a different name for the variable of the for the container, the organizing balls function.
It was me.
Oh, that was you, wasn't it, Jeff? Okay, cool. Yeah. And so, yeah, when we brought it back to HackerRank, I just had them switch the name of it. We used the term queries instead of containers or whatever it was called in the HackerRank item. So yeah, just said, hey, just switch that to queries. So if the variable name of the function that HackerRank gives you doesn't make sense and you don't like it, you can just change it 100%. Any other questions? And I'll open the floor also for algorithm questions. So tomorrow at the start of class, like I said, we'll start up. We'll open the floor for questions, but we'll also allow for like 30 minutes of algorithm attempts. If anyone wants to take a last minute attempt, I'll give some final hints. But overall, again, don't worry so much about trying to solve it. The main thing is just play with it. This really should just be, you should be treating this as a playground. Seeing what you can get done, see what you can get to print out, see what kind of code can you get to do what can you get it to do, and how close can you get. We will review it. We will definitely review this algorithm tomorrow. And then at one point we will have a coding session with you guys. Like I said, we'll get either to 2 or 3 and actually attempt a simpler algorithm tomorrow. Maybe 2, probably 2 algorithms actually tomorrow, but they'll be simpler. Sound good?
Yep.
Cool. Any final call? So final call, any questions? All right, then. I'll see you guys tomorrow.
Bye-bye.
Have a good night.
Good night. Have a good night.